Let's talk about it. Hello and welcome to Thicc Radio, the podcast where we take a deep dive into gainer culture and everything in its orbit. I'm James.
And I'm Tim. Let's get into this. Today we're joined by a special guest. You know them, you love them. It's Mox.
Yay! Thank you for being here.
Very flattered.
How are you?
I'm definitely fanboying out because for like the viewers or the listeners, you know, I don't know if you guys know who Mox is, but what really well-known gainer during the time of like Beefy Frat, amazing artist. And I didn't know up until now, like your other endeavors. So I'm really, this is awesome to talk to you.
Yeah, it's a long history.
She's been there. She's done it all. How are you today?
I'm doing great. You know, both of you are working, so you had a day, right?
Yeah.
I'm just every day trying to find something to do with my time. So like hearing that you guys had a decent day is good news for me.
Nothing to do with your day, so you were like, why not do an episode of a podcast?
Oh yeah, my big task every day is to go get a coffee. Once I do that, it's like, okay, day's done, back into my pajamas and figure something out.
I'm jealous.
I'm not at this point, dude. It's so not fun. I'm over it. I miss New York City being New York City. It's starting to get there again. It was kind of fun last night, but still, it's not 100%.
Well, that's fair. It sounds a lot like London in that regard. Like things are starting to open up again, and like I don't want people to be crazy, but at the same time, I just want like a rager of a night. I want to go to like the proper.
Oh God, yeah.
I want to be like a sardine between like all these like big beefy men. I want to smell nothing but like
yeah.
I want like
human contact.
You know, I want someone to touch me.
Listen, every person that I've talked to, and if you're like familiar with Rock Bar in any way, shape, or form, that is like the bare like Grommr gainer kind of place. You'll always bump into someone from Grommr there, just because that's like a safe space for big guys. But like I've been talking to people, and everyone's just so desperate for like having to push through the crowd to get to the bar.
Now
that's it. Like not even like making out with anyone, not even like potentially like maybe having a spark or something. It's just the physicality of pushing through a crowd at that bar. Like that's what people are craving. It's wild.
See, now I'm super jealous because nobody gives a shit about Cleveland. And Cleveland, it just sucks. There's no reason to give a shit about it. There's a reason why we call it the Mistake by the Lake. There is nothing that goes on so here. Cool. And there was nothing that ever went on here anyway. So,
well, but then what a perfect place to make something happen.
You know,
I'm trying so hard, but the gay community here just does nothing but push back. We are the worst about supporting ourselves.
You know what you do have? You have one half of a world famous multi-million-dollar podcast centered around plus sizedness, featuring two of the most popular, beautiful, and intelligent human beings that have ever lived. So come and get it, Cleveland. Come and get it.
Fair dues.
Proud of you guys.
So listen, Tim.
But like going back to.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Oh, I just want to make a quick point about like how New York City, like since the subways have been shut down too, like there is what I call the pumpkin hour, where everyone's got to run home before like you're just shit out of luck and you got to get a cab. And we're gearing up. May 17th, the subways are back full on 24 hours. So that should bring some semblance of life.
So, Tim, what are we talking about today?
Today we're actually talking about fashion, both fashion lines that are geared towards larger men, and Mox is, to my knowledge, a fashion designer, which is something that I have to tip my hat to, because I find that whole world fascinating. Like, I don't understand how someone can take like a concept to an actual piece of clothing. Like, I have zero skill where that's concerned. And fashion is something that I think on some level all gay men love. So I'm kind of excited to talk to you about this.
Yeah. So I just wanted to clarify. I wouldn't name or consider myself a fashion designer because I didn't go to school for any of the technicalities of design, but I do work as a stylist.
Okay.
So my breadth of knowledge is sometimes about construction of garments and sometimes about, materials and things like that.
Well, that's still valid, because even being a stylist is like, there's
to a point, it's like, you learn that knowledge.
There are people who do that for celebrities. They get paid a lot of money to do that, and like it still requires fashion knowledge. So
true.
100%.
But and nothing. I wouldn't say anything that I'm gonna like say today is law, and I don't like hold fashion as like this like pillar of something as much either, because I kind of came into it a little later, and also because I came into it later, like as sacred as certain moments are in fashion, like the whole thing, I could poke a bunch of holes into fashion and just make it look like Swiss cheese at the end. So, I do have kind of a devil's advocate of it all.
I love that. But listen, today we're sitting down with Mox, who is a stylist to the stars. And by the stars, I mean me, I'm a star. So let's get into it. Mox, I want to ask you, so you went to school for art and majored in illustration, but now you work in fashion, and you do say you came into it a little bit later. How does art, illustration, fashion, how do they intersect? And what led you to choose fashion?
It's all right. This is your life. It's kind of one of those things that you don't realize at first how much artistic qualities are used to create a garment, whether it's a t-shirt or a ball gown or whatever it is. There's always kind of an element that it will start on paper. There's very few designers, I think, that like immediately just go to draping fabrics and constructing a dress or an outfit. Sometimes it always starts with a sketch. So I've always drawn my whole life. I got, into high school, and when you go to art school, you go to an art school with the idea of studying either fine art, which is, drawing, or ceramics or painting, or, any of the classic type of art genres. And then there's, the more marketable, because it's tough to be an artist. You're not necessarily guaranteed that you're going to have money at the end of it. But then there are the more marketable majors that are communication design, which is the umbrella term for, illustration and graphic design and branding and all of those things that are really like people driven. And then there's also fashion kind of falls under the more career based fields once you graduate. So for me, I started out in fine arts, and I was, doing oil paintings and sculptures and, found object art and all that type of stuff. And then they ask you, your sophomore year, like, what do you want to focus on? And by that point, I had transferred schools, and I decided to kind of go and do illustration because I've always enjoyed drawing. But also it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of work to like get an assignment, and for 3 weeks you work on it. You show it at critique, and the teacher literally looks at it and goes, "Oh, you didn't work on this enough. You could do better." And no matter how many hours you spent on it. So after a while, I had just like stacks of paper, and it started to like not be fun. And I needed like a space to step away from that. And it ended up kind of being more instantaneous to create with styling using garments, because you basically build the look that you're imagining instead of having to labor over drawing what is the idea, and then coming out with, you know, a tangible thing at the end. You have something that's a garment or an outfit or, you know, an editorial for a magazine that is something you can look at differently. Sorry, that was a lot.
No, it's that was one of my biggest turnoffs about art school. Is the reason, I think the reason why I didn't pursue it was because, like you said, you create something, like you put a lot of time and attention into it, and like to you, you're like, I'm done. But then you've got a teacher telling you this isn't good enough. It's like, okay, correct me if I'm wrong. Is not art subjective? Like, what is the whole point of being like, okay, well, you could have done better? I'm like, well, I'm not Botticelli. I don't want to be. You know, I'm not Van Gogh. I'm not Rodin. I'm not, you know, Ansel Adams. Like, why do I have to be compared to these people and be told you should have done this or you could have done that better? It's like, I hated that. I hated like taking a portfolio to someone and present it and then say like, this is good, but it's not good enough for us. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of that is like really heartbreaking. But also, you know, when you're in art school, you start to begin to kind of like focus what your work is into, you know, what it is you enjoy. So if I was doing illustration and it was collage based or something like that, like typically I'd be looking at contemporary artists or, you know, anyone else kind of in the industry working, doing that type of work. So you end up kind of like aligning yourself with things that you like, but at the same time, like when you're doing an assignment, you're supposed to meet those expectations. And basically, as an illustration major, they're training you to have a client that's demanding a certain outcome. And to also be prepared for them to be like, no, you didn't do it right. Like, please do it again. I
understand that.
Yeah.
So, but that's also like a heartbreaking thing. And fine artists don't have to worry about that, because a fine artist creates their painting and they like done, right?
Yeah, I mean, look at Matisse, look at Modigliani, look at fucking Jackson Pollock.
Exactly. Yeah. So
what was
so also like
Jackson Pollock?
Having
sorry, what'd you say, James?
What was that story about a Jackson Pollock? He submitted a painting to a gallery, and it was the typical motif. It was all black and white, and there was this one spot of red on it. And this art curator was going on and saying, "Oh my goodness, this red! It clearly represents this anguish, the blood, and all," and just going on and on and on. And there were other people going, "Oh, I think it means this." And then Pollock happened to be stopping by the gallery because he was late for the own thing, and because everyone was talking about it, they went, you know, Jackson, we just love this new piece so much. We just want to know, what does this red mean? And he goes, oh, swipes his finger at it. He says, yeah, something about like ketchup from lunch. Like,
you know,
come on.
Spot on.
You know, before we move on to the next question, I just want to do a little rant on art, and I'll have said my piece on fine art as a whole, right? So modern art, I'm not shitting on modern artists. I understand that they have vision and that museums pay a lot of money for this stuff, but I have walked through the modern art section of most museums, and the shit that I see is like, I could have done that when I got bored. I don't understand how a bunch of cigarette butts stamped out on a piece of tile is considered art. I don't understand how a bunch of Barbies wrapped in saran wrap is considered art. I could piss on a crucifix and put it in a mason jar and call it modern art.
I mean, ladies and gentlemen,
you want me to punch a hole in that?
Feel free, because I maybe I'm completely wrong. I guess because
no, this is the thing. You didn't do it first and call it art. And literally, it takes that pioneering vision of someone to be like Duchamp, to put a toilet up and be like, this is art. And it was never considered before that could be art, or a found object could be a creation. So it did turn the whole art world on its head of what is the definition of art. And that's the one thing that, like, you know, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Like,
but it just drives me nuts sometimes.
Oh yeah. Especially when you realize that, like, some people, like, you know, they kind of have their one note, and you're like, all right, I get it. But yeah, the pioneers of kind of bending art, they were cool. But then there's a lot of assholes now.
So I want to ask, what has your own fashion journey been like? Because you and I have had this chat. I find you to be a very stylish person. For listeners, if you ever see his Instagram, there's always a pair of boots. There's always some kind of an effect. And I don't know, it's just that maybe it's the way you carry yourself, but whatever you wear, I look at it.
Oh yeah, that's like 80% of it, dude.
Is that just just like
80%? Just like fake it till you make it.
I've heard that. I mean, I've heard people say you could walk out of the house wearing a trash bag, and if you've got enough,
you got to be your own hype boy.
If you've got enough moxie, you can do anything with it. And as long as you're like, yeah, this is what I'm wearing. What the fuck do you care? And people will.
Real. It's on. Like I tell people all the time, like if you're not comfortable in it, like it'll show. And if you are comfortable in it, like you forget about so much, and you're so much more your authentic self. So there's a saying, when you die, your trumpeter dies with you, which is basically like what I do every day. It's like, there's no one out there who's going to clap when I walk out the door. I got to do it myself. You put something on and if you enjoy it, and like walk it out.
I love that. So I'm curious, what do you think is happening in the zeitgeist right now that casts a light on plus size issues in the fashion industry?
Well, I think like just, the idea that there's others, for a long time, you get told that, specifically when you're younger, because I think you're not as aware of kind of the world around you and how big it really is and how little certain viewpoints are. But I feel like, the one thing, like a couple years ago, I think most makeup companies had only a couple of shades of foundation. And then you have the Fenty company, which has blown up because they have so many varying shades. And it's like businesses now are starting to realize that like, oh, there's way more bodies and they all have bank accounts. So I think that's kind of like the unpacking of the box of like everyone has money and some people are cashing in on it to be able to say we have your size. It's a great opportunity for them.
I love that. Tim, you're a little bit older. You've probably seen a couple more. Roll the eyes, girl. Roll them eyes. Whatever. You've seen a couple more trends pass you by than maybe what I have done. Like, how do you think the kind of modern approach to fashion and plus size fashion differs to how plus size fashion's been approached in the past?
I mean, when I was I guess you become sort of fashion conscious when you get to choose your own clothing. And like, especially as you get into the older grades, like in high school, your clothing kind of becomes a statement about your personality. Like I went goth, and I went goth in a big way. And so like for me, it really wasn't that hard because I was rail thin. I was 115 pounds. So like everything was kind of made for me. I was in that body shape that it was very easy for me to go out and get clothes. There were plenty of smalls. But I remember like I was friends with some girls that were of larger sizes, and like my best friend at the time, who was also a lesbian, I fucking loved her. She was so funny. We'd go to the mall, and I'd go to Hot Topic because that was really the only goth store in the 90s. And I'd be buying my bondage pants and my black tank tops and whatever. And then she'd be like, okay, we have to go to the fat girl store now. And so like we'd have to go to Lane Bryant. I don't think Torrid existed at the time.
No.
But there really wasn't. And even going to like major department stores, your Sears, Dillard's, JCPenney's, the big and tall section was pretty abysmal. I mean, it was clothes that nobody wanted to wear. They were usually ugly patterns and very poorly cut.
Plaids weren't cool.
Yeah. Like all this, but that was back when looking like a lumberjack wasn't what you were trying to go for. It was just like what you had to deal with.
Accidental lumberjack.
Yeah, and I'm kind of amazed at how far it's come. And like in my own fashion journey, this might sound stupid, but being able to walk into a store and actually buy a large because I needed a large, I was like, it was kind of a revelation. It's like, wow, I'm actually in a bigger size than I used to, because I used to be able to wear extra small shirts and a size 28 jeans. Like,
Yeah,
100% girl. Like when I started gaining, I was 100 pounds even. I was wearing triple XS shirts. I was like 24, 26-inch waist. And,
oh, Jesus Christ.
at that size, I sometimes had to shop in the kids section, which is really horrible. Like nothing feels more emasculating than having to buy literal children's clothing, because that is what and it just feels creepy and wrong. There's no denying.
Yeah, my heart.
But like that's the reality. And I knew people who did that because that's just what they did for a long time. Like until my sister started having kids, she wore kids' clothing because she was that kind of shape. For the first time, she's wearing like zero, being the fat she is, which is insane. But that's the people that I come from. So a similar moment to you, Tim. When I was in Citrus in 2019, living my best bear life, having a great time, now having gained for a few years, I tried on this really cute bear tank top, which was a large because I was in larges and I felt good about it, but it was too tight. And I looked at my friend and I was like, I think I need the extra large. And it was amazing to be in extras again, but in the other direction. It was quite a moment. So I think clothing can have that effect on you,
If you'd like to have another, oh no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I was just gonna say that like I was never like a skinny kid. When I graduated high school, I was like 170 already. So I was already like, on the bigger side. But I get what you guys are saying, because that's like something very much that you wanted. For me, I don't let my body do what it wants. So that's kind of always been the kick I'm on. But no, I get that it's like, the aha moment of enjoying needing a different size.
The only thing that I was going to add is, James, if you'd like to have another moment like that, just order clothing from any distributor in China. And like you're in 3XL.
That's so real.
I wouldn't mind trying that, but then I'd really hate to be on an online forum and tell people that I'm a certain weight or size and then have to retract those statements later because I'm a horrendous liar and I'm leading certain people down a rabbit hole, having embezzled money out of them out of a lie. I'd really hate to do that. So that's that on that. So funnily enough, along those lines, I'm curious to hear your take. Like there are these like bigger bear fashion brands that have really sort of come to the fore in the last 10 years or so. So you've got Nasty Pig is the big one everyone knows, Johnny Big, which started back in Australia, and things like Caftco, which is like this caftan bear run business that's a thing now. What is your take on these? I guess you would describe them as like sort of microcosm fashion brands.
Oh, I don't want to like, really take the wind out of anyone's sails. But for me, like going back to what you asked earlier about like what was your fashion journey, right? Mm-hmm. I started out, a closeted high schooler, and I very much did not want to stand out. So I wore like Abercrombie hoodies and just like, what everyone else in my high school was wearing at the time. So just to blend in. And I think that's kind of what I was saying earlier about how your perspective of what is fashion or what is like acceptable fashion also changes as you kind of experience more and get to see different viewpoints of things. So for me, I went from like trying to blend in as much as possible to like where today, like I hate blending in. Like I can't stand, like my memories are like going to college, and I remember like going on a field trip, and I arrived at the museum for our art history class, and there was a kid wearing the same exact sweater from the Gap. And I was like, oh, this is what happens when enough of a brand is around. And I do love plus size stuff. I don't want to like, take away from that. But sometimes when you get these brands that are popular, you kind of end up accidentally re-homogenizing the whole crowd. So you then create lack of diversity again in personal aesthetics and, you know, personal style.
I mean, it's interesting, right? Like you say, you wouldn't want to take the wind out of anyone's sails. I think the response I would have to that is, you know, if something's built with enough of a foundation, like genuine critique or commentary shouldn't really be doing any damage. If anything, it should be bringing out a point. If someone listens to that and then goes, huh, there might be something to what they're saying, and then they go, rather than looking at that like that's a negative, maybe looking at that as an opportunity to say, we didn't realize the sort of situation we might have been in. Maybe there's something to glean from this and move in that direction. Because that's also a little bit of what we try to touch on with most other subjects we kind of talk about. Like there's the inference of the potential negative in a lot of situations. You know, to the listener out there, maybe you are the person doing the negative thing, but maybe you're not. And if you are the person doing the thing, you know, you can hear us having an open and active conversation. That's how you move forward from those moments. There's discussion, there's sharing of ideas, a diversity of thought, and it helps you to grow as a person and move forward, you know. So if there happen to be any like bare fashion brands listening, take the challenge, you know, like,
oh my God, are you guys sponsored?
No, we wish.
Like, imagine if I did that to you, just like rip that sponsorship away with that one comment.
Gosh, can you imagine? Like, we're not sponsored, you know, it just so happens to be that I love Ajax Spray and Wipe, you know, the original household cleaning product that cleans surfaces in under 60 seconds. It's not my fault.
Vita Veta Vegemite.
I would love to be sponsored by Nasty Pig. I actually really like them because, you know, they do a lot of pup gear too. And as a puppy, like that's like Mr. S and Nasty Pig are two of the biggest ones that we go to. I would love to buy a caftan from Caftco, but I don't want to spend $100 on.
Here's my thing on it. Ready for this? There's so much vintage fashion out there. And I think a lot of people, like, either they get the heebie-jeebies from it, or, you know, they don't want to go through the effort of it. And also, this goes back to what you guys are saying. Like, there is a certain amount of, like, how much do you care about fashion, which you have to kind of consider. Because certain people want to look good in certain things, and they will go that extra. So I know that when I go to a thrift store, there is, like, a caftan section, or, you know, like, a dressing gown section, like, things that people sometimes want. They're there. You don't always have to spend $100 or more for, you know, what it is. If you want it brand new, that's a different story. If you don't mind having something used, or, you know, they're also, like, when people say used, they're combed through and they get rid of anything that's, like, obviously an issue.
Well, my question would be then, are like most, like, because caftans were really like a woman's apparel thing, at least over here in the US, right? So if you go to a vintage store, you're going to find caftans that are meant for women. And that's the only reason, like I mentioned Caftco, is because they're making it more like typically masculine cut. Well, I guess not even the cut would be considered masculine, because it's draping it over you.
If you undo it, it's literally just like a square of fabric with a hole in the center.
Maybe it's the patterns. They're choosing a little bit more masculine patterns.
But like, still at the same time, you're wearing a caftan. Like, you're gonna go that far and then stop there by not wearing a feminine pattern. That's gonna be your hang up.
I just wanted something that would be really light and breezy for the summer when my fat ass is sweating profusely, so I can just throw that on and walk around the house, and I can be free balling under it. And
right, but there's ponchos too. Like, there's so many. Like, you could wear, you know, a house coat, like, it just whatever floats your boat.
Because, like, I have a yukata, but then my legs are, like, stuck together, so, like, I can't get comfortable.
I have a poncho. I should wear it more.
Yeah, I used to have a poncho that I bought initially because I wanted to wear it as a poncho, and then I found myself, like, folding it into a triangle and using it as a scarf because I just love the colors in it. So, like, for me, like, you know, I could buy something, and also, like, going back to like gendering fashion a little bit, I totally always look in women's sections because you never know what you're gonna find. And there's like funny things that I had that are for women's that once I like, you know, cut them or stitch something onto it, you would never know. So for me, I have like a little bit more of the gumption to go out and like find that stuff and to do that. But
and if I had any skill with a needle and thread, I'd probably feel the same way. I can't even sew a button back on.
But that's like learning too. Like at some point you learn to do it, maybe. You know, you're selling yourself a little short there. I have faith in you being able to pick up how to sew a button.
She can sew
Lord
a
knows you're gonna know.
button.
Yeah, but you're gonna need that skill, buddy, if you keep on getting bigger too.
I know,
so
right? I've already outgrown a pretty expensive suit, so I should learn how to let it out.
I mean, it doesn't hurt. Or also, like a really great thing, find a great tailor. Have them do it for you. You
know, tailoring, that's... I feel like this is a conversation I had with a friend, Abe, you know, mutual friend. He gets all of his shit tailored. And having this conversation of like, tailoring actually... It's actually not that crazy. It's not. It extends the life of your clothing because what is the wear and tear in your clothing? Why does it wear and tear? Because seams are being pulled too much in one direction because it's too tight over here, or it's pulling because of the constant bounce and drag of the fact that the seams are too loose in another direction. So that's where you get reams and these pulls that happen where you need to get them fixed up. That's where you get the splits and all of these things happening. And it's like prior to the advent of like modern fashion, every household human being had to learn how to tailor their own shit because you couldn't afford to get a pair of trousers. You better stitch another fucking thing. You put another patch over a hole in your trousers because you're putting another one. It's like you would buy the trousers, keep them long, but hem them so that you could let them down later for like the hand-me-down. Yeah, when they grow, re-stitch them back up for when the kid's brand new. So, you know, I think we do forget the kind of history that we come from when it comes to fashion. And much like every other event, even like something like food, like when you think about it, if the supermarket's all shut down, we're all going to starve because none of us know how to like kill an animal and eat it. None of us know how to forage for berries or mushrooms. None of us know how to do shit. Same thing. I mean,
I have plucked a chicken before, so at least if there's a chicken around, I can survive off chicken. Ladies and gentlemen, during the apocalypse, go find our lovely co-host Tim. He will pluck a chicken for you.
Pick your teams now, motherfuckers.
Now, I did not kill said chicken, and that is something I don't know. Like, I'll be like, yeah.
You gotta be careful with chickens too, because like the thing is, the way their central nervous system works, like they will still keep going for a bit after the head comes clean off.
Oh yeah.
So you gotta
you salt the meat too. Like, doesn't that happen with frog legs and stuff?
Yeah, you gotta keep an eye on that shit. But listen, since we're kind of talking about like the advent of fashion and these sort of fashion moments that you sort of referred to before, Mox, there is one moment that I think stands out to I think stands out to a lot of people. Back in 1998, I think it was Alec Weck. She was in a Betsy Johnson runway. She'd been styled in like a blonde wig, and at the end of the runway, she just takes it and throws it off. And in a BBC interview, she says, that wig was not just about me taking it off to make a scene. It was a time that I was just starting in fashion to work. And the one thing I told my agents was, if you are going to represent me, I'm not going to be a gimmick and be in for a couple of seasons. You're going to take it all or leave it. So kind of going on a more broad question here about fashion, how has the world of fashion, beauty, and makeup shifted from European standards of beauty?
Well, I mean, that's like it has been a really interesting kind of unfolding in the last, I would say 10 years, because that's when people start to really notice things that were problematic within beauty standards, and, you know, even down to the pages of Vogue itself. But for me, the way I like, also referencing earlier, like talking about Fenty as showcasing, you know, multiple complexions, and that becoming very profitable because multiple different complexions need multiple different makeup. And the same with body sizes. you start to get this shift of what it is. And keep in mind, 10 years ago, like, the thing wasn't to have a Kim Kardashian butt, or like, it was actually to have J-Lo's butt. But that was, again, a shift for women, that was okay. For men, it used to be the Axe body commercials, the body spray. So, you grew up seeing just men with abs, but now we have the term dad bod, and dad bod is acceptable. But I think also because of that Alek moment, where she basically took off the blonde wig to signify that she's not going to live under that standard, you have so many shifts in fashion. Like, British Vogue is now, fully headed by Edward Enninful, and he's a Black man. So that is already, having a trickle down effect of who is being featured, what models are being used. The diversity is already being present in media, and it's getting stronger. If British Vogue is showing different ethnicities and body sizes, then it's only a matter of time before, hopefully, people realize that, like, oh, there are different races, ethnicities, bodies, shapes, and fashion basically over the years, until more recently. I was just watching something about this. Fashion used to be more about the silhouette and the shape, not your size. Mm-hmm. So it used to be, the narrow waist and the bust and the, wide hips. But you could be a big woman and still achieve that shape that was popular. So that was social norm and socially acceptable. But it's only been in recent years.
New look, yeah.
Yeah, but even before, like, way before that, with
Marilyn Monroe
and corsets. But like, now I feel like we're getting to that point where people are starting to realize, like, the diet trends that really started in like the 70s, 80s, 90s just kind of directed people that thin and small is it. Whereas like, it was never about your actual size as much as it was about achieving the popular silhouette.
Mm.
Makes sense.
Something that I am just so fascinated by, and I want to say this has maybe been less than 10 years it's been happening. I never thought that I would see this. I never thought that I would see plus size male models. I really thought that was never going to be a thing, because like, the trend, like for women, like they could be plus size, which even back like when they said we're starting to allow plus size models on covers of magazines and in fashion shows and all that, they weren't really large women, plus size meant, I think, somewhere like between like 6 and 8, but they were shapely. They had more curves, they had bigger busts and bigger hips and bigger thighs. But then I thought, well, they're never going to accept a guy with a beer belly or a gut, walking down a runway wearing fashionable clothing. And, I was just so elated that they were allowing plus size men to do it, because like, there is this unbelievably gorgeous Latino plus size model, and he's got a belly, he's got hips, he's got a big ass, he's even got really big, moobs, and he is walking for some of the most influential and biggest houses in all of fashion. And I'm like, yes. Why did this not happen before?
Well, someone within the fashion industry, like, longstanding career, Jean-Paul Gaultier, has always had the craziest fashion shows with the most diverse cast and sizes, shapes, ethnicities, genders, sometimes, non-binary, early, like way in the 90s. Like, if you go back and watch those shows, and even like Beth Ditto walked his runway, and Andrea Petchik, who is a trans model. So that was all, when I was in college, like 10 years ago. So it's always been bubbling that, like, there's others. And I think that's also kind of, in a weird way, I think, aligned with gay rights and just gay visibility. The othering of people. We band together at some point, and it's nice to kind of step out and have that momentum. And I think right now it's really hitting in a much stronger way than it ever did before.
100%. I mean, Dexter Mayfield is the name that comes to mind for me. This beautiful Black model who has personality and curves and swerves for days, weeks, months, years, all of it. And I really find that it's people who have that opportunity to really showcase the best of themselves. And I don't know, sometimes it's those random moments that you actually see yourself represented for the first time. Like,
Oh, yeah.
and maybe that's part of the reason so many plus size guys don't identify with fashion, because we never see ourselves in it. And when people actually make the effort, dress up a fat dude, make him look real fucking smexy, and put him on that goddamn catwalk, like, dudes are gonna turn around and go,
We're even seeing a well-dressed big guy in public,
oh my
not,
God.
you know, dressed to the nines. Like, I go through Midtown Manhattan and I'll see like a guy who's a big dude in a beautiful suit. And I'm like, damn, that does look good.
Oh,
Like,
don't even talk
you
to me.
don't always see that outside of the runway.
No, but you know what? A big man in a beautiful suit, I can't. Because my mind immediately goes Vincent D'Onofrio, Marvel's Daredevil as Kingpin. Yes, he's a psychopath, but my God, does he look good, you know? It's this,
I saw a guy the other day that made me like stop, because I was like, wow. I'm not saying that like no guy could do that before, but it was like this guy hit every note.
every
And it just was, and I could tell he did something, because he was like, you know, sitting there on his phone outside, and outside of a hotel, this beautiful hotel too. And I was just like, wow, like you have the money that you wanted to do this right, and you did it. So it got me.
I love that. We've also kind of already addressed this, like how important is it for plus size folk to learn how to sew and alter clothing? But, you know, really just to kind of hone in on that point, like, as you say, we're going to need this as we get bigger. Buttons are going to go, zippers are going to bust,
Certain
things are going to
things.
pull.
There's like the things that you can do yourself at home to make things easier. I know people that have taken the button on their pants and shifted it over an inch just because they needed it, you know? But also like for me, I get an old t-shirt at a thrift store and I'll cut the sleeves off and make it a tank top or a skank tank for summer. And I love doing that because I go to the store, I maybe spend $10 on like 5 t-shirts, maybe sometimes even more. Sometimes it's like $1 a t-shirt if it's, you know, a good spot. But I take them and they're not precious unless they're like really a cool t-shirt, but they're not precious to me, so I can fuck them up. And if I cut off a sleeve and it's like, oh, that wasn't a straight line, it's like, fuck it. Because fashion really at the root of it too, everything should be kind of fun for you. If you're not having fun doing it, it's not interesting, it's not gonna feel great, it's not gonna look great. But I kind of take that into my own hands with, you know, learning a needle and thread and how to sew something if it rips a little bit, or, you know, like I've patched the crotch of my jeans so many times myself. And that's like, and even bring like once like it hits that point where it's like, oh, you can't help this anymore, I bring it to a tailor, you know, at a laundromat, and I ask them, can you patch this? And, you know, there's ways that you learn how to do it appropriately for that type of damage to a garment. So
I should have been doing that, because I have blown the crotch out of so many jeans. I never blow the seat. I never blow the seat out, but it's always the crotch. It always rips on one thigh. It's like the left thigh inseam will always split open, and then I just end up going and buying a new pair of jeans.
Yeah, but like also, if you love those jeans, you like the way they fit, and that's like the one issue with it. You could fix that, and they're still wearable.
I need to start doing that then. I need to
it's not that bad. And sometimes like alterations, like if you're like, I get that also when big guys buy a pair of pants, let's say, because of fit models at design houses. And the fit model is, there's like, you know, a small fit model, there's a medium fit model, and then there's a large fit model. And maybe if they have other sizes, but the basic gist is they take that model as the average of sizing for larges, and they base their whole entire collections off of that model's measurements.
You know what my takeaway from that is? It means that those fit models don't have a whole lot like to work with, because there's no room in the fucking crotch.
But that's also why you have like fitness models, and then you have fit models, and then you have like fashion models. Like they're very different body types. Obviously, it's kind of wild. It's a whole like, it's a beast, the fashion industry, that you could really unpack. But part of what I mentioned that for was that when you get a pair of pants, and if you need a 38-inch waist, that's usually fit model territory for being like 6 foot something, you know, like like that guy that they have as a fit model with a 38-inch waist is not a fat guy. Probably it's probably a tall guy with big waist or big shoulders or whatever that is. So there's moments that you get these items and you will have to hem them, otherwise you're going to have fabric pooling around your ankles, and you know that works then, because you bring it, you cut it to the right appropriate length, and then you can wear it. And no one would know that it had an extra foot of fabric or whatever it was. But, you know, that's what I do with t-shirts. And I'll roll the sleeves and put like a stitch in them to hold them there, because sometimes a sleeve goes so much longer than it needs to. And you're like, what the hell is all this? And especially with large clothing, when it's like for big guys, the one complaint is like, I don't need all this fabric down my leg. I don't need all the sleeve that comes on this t-shirt. Like that's the annoying part for big guys. Yeah, like 50% of the big guy crowd is usually going to be carrying a belly, some ass, some thighs. There's no need for your calves typically to have the proportions that they would use for a fit model of that size. It's very rare that someone would fill that whole garment, you know, like a standard pair of jeans or something.
So here's a question for you. For people, I'll admit, like myself, who may not feel like they have a sense of fashion but want to develop it, how do we go about that? And being honest, how difficult is it for plus size people to achieve that?
Well, for me, it goes back to like, yeah, it's going to be really hard for someone of size to want to look like Brad Pitt in every outfit Brad Pitt has on. That's just the reality. You can dress in that fashion, you know, if it's a pair of slacks and a white shirt, a white button-down shirt, right? But also to some extent, you have to like have that confidence in yourself that you like the way that looks on you, and that your goal isn't to look exactly like Brad Pitt. So I think part of it is making sure your self-esteem, like I said earlier, I'm like 80% fake it till you make it. You know, I step out the door sometimes and it's something that I threw together, and it's like, I may think back and say I looked crazy, but I wore it with enough confidence and I was comfortable in it and I was happy in that moment. But I also think, you know, some guys care more about fashion than other guys, and especially gay guys. same happens in that realm too. Some care more than others. But I also, I think it goes back to kind of like what do you want out of it?
That's a fair point.
And to me, like if you want to kind of figure out like what you want out of it, the best thing that I would say is like, who are celebrities or any figures that you look at and images that you see that you're like, I love that jacket, or I love this photo for some reason. Like half the time I wear, most of the time I wear combat boots. And that's just because I just love boots. I love Tom of Finland drawings, and that's kind of like part of that maybe. And there's just something about wearing a pair of boots around, and you know, having to realize that if I'm wearing my boots, what do I put with this? But that's also like, I just love that kind of motorcycle culture and Tom of Finland and leather and stuff like that. Is, I don't know, there's something about that. So I know that that's where I'm directing my attention when it comes to how I want to shop or what I want to create as a look for myself to go out in. So it's hard to like, it's really searching yourself and realizing I'm into this, and that's where I want to direct my attention.
Tim, what have your experiences been? Because we talked about this on a previous episode regarding leather, and it's funny that you bring up Tom of Finland as an inspiration, because I don't think we actually talked about Tom of Finland once.
No.
Oh my God, he's such like a seminal part of gay culture too.
Yeah, he's an icon. But like we did talk about Warren Davis, who is arguably the Tom of Finland of the gainer world.
Gainers. Yeah. Sure, yeah,
of course. Like a crossover really, isn't there, with that kind of line art style of how these caricatures are drawn. I think there's definitely a lot of crossover inspiration with that. But Tim, you and I had a bit of a conversation about how you buy those leather pieces and there is a sense of frustration when they don't necessarily fit you. Like, what has been your approach to fashion when it comes to leather?
Expensive.
Well, yeah, leather is very expensive. So the tip that I would give, that if you're into leather and you're going to be gaining, buy things that are larger sizes or things that are adjustable. Like I have a vest that is not adjustable. It was cut as a medium and it doesn't fit me anymore. And leather stretches. Like if you condition leather and you get it really soft, it will stretch, but it can only stretch so far. Like it's not like latex, which can stretch even further.
Leather is former skin.
Yeah. Leather is, there are limitations with it, but like my harnesses that I have, they're all like large size harnesses and they have adjustable straps. There's like, I'm not on the last button of anything with those. So I've got a lot of wear out of those, but like chaps, that can be really difficult because like, even though the waist may still fit, because all of those waists have a lot of like adjustable methods, it's the inseam zipper that will cause you the problem, because that's what happened. My thighs just happened to outgrow my chaps. So yeah, that's like a $300 pair of chaps that I can't fit into anymore. And then when it just comes to like my fashion and sense in general, like something that frustrates me a lot is the city that I live in. I live in a city that's not too culturally diverse. It's not very fashion forward. I would like to wear things that are a bit more inspired by the Asian continent. I love a Mandarin collar. I love things that look very, either like from Japan or from India. I love clothes that have that style. The only way that I can get them here is if I order them online, and I can't try them on. So I don't know, like I can do my measurements and everything, but again, I don't know, like, are they considering this for Asian sizes? Are these for US sizes? Sometimes they're not very clear. I've ordered a lot of clothing online that ends up not fitting. And I get really frustrated by that because I order some really cool looking stuff and then I can't wear it. So like, that's my major frustration with fashion. Like here in Cleveland, we have everything. We got Gap, Abercrombie, Urban Outfitters, H&M, Hot Topic, but I'm not satisfied with those choices because it's just not unique enough.
See, can I tell you something? Like just those stores that you named, I can honestly say I have not set foot in any of those stores in years.
And that's like the only thing we got here. So it's like, those are my options.
It's like I go to thrift stores and I find like these weird one-off things on the rack, and it's very much a combination and a mismatch of things. But like sometimes like going to a thrift store, also sizes were different back then. So you might find a jacket, like I have leather jackets and stuff that I found that I was like, this fits much better than anything I would ever have found in, Bloomingdale's or on Macy's.com or anything. And also the other half of it is ordering online. It seems fun until you keep on getting things that don't fit. And like half of the reality is you kind of got to go to stores and you got to put some things on.
Yeah. That's what I hated about online shopping is I don't physically have the garment to try on my body to see where it's tight, where it's loose. Yeah.
And this past year and change now is obviously a very specific moment of having to online shop. But in the past, I used to kind of go shopping, try a bunch of different like size larges from, whether it was Ralph Lauren or Inc. at Macy's, or, you know, you go into the dressing room with 6 size larges from different brands and you see how those fit you. And then you kind of realize like my brand that I fit in and I like and I enjoy is, you know, Inc. or whatever it is. So then, you know, at least if you want t-shirts, that those are the ones that are cut for you. So if you go online, it's kind of like being familiar with the brand already and being brand loyal in a way that you want to kind of make sure that you're still producing things that are fit for me, because that's half of it. Like if the demand isn't there, things go away. So if they know that, like, you know, people are buying their shirts because they fit a larger body better, then it should, by all intents and purposes, keep going.
Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense.
But also talking about like what you were saying with leather, because leather is expensive.
oh yeah,
I personally have never bought like a leather fetish item for myself other than accessories. And this is like clear across the board. If you're a big guy and if you're getting bigger, one of the easiest things you could do for yourself is keep everything else pretty simple and basic. I know that's really tough to do today in the world of extra. You know, like everyone wants to be extra. They throw that around left and right. But the reality is extra costs a lot of money, and it's a lot of shitty money because you're spending like, you know, maybe $100 on like these things that in a year you might not want to wear again because it's a trend and it's over and it's, you know, passe already. But the way I always found like a loophole in that is if everything else in your wardrobe is pretty like solid, you know, they're like good t-shirts, simple t-shirts, a good jacket, no bells and whistles and stuff like that. All your accessories, you could go to the leather shop and get like a harness much cheaper than a pair of chaps. And I know that's like a different aesthetic too, but if you plan to get bigger, you got to kind of accept and come to terms with the fact that like at some point, like the leather fetish gear will not fit, or that latex suit is going to hit a limit if you're getting really big. But in regular everyday fashion, a good pair of jeans, a good pair of boots, shoes, you know, t-shirts, hoodie, and then the hat can always change if you wear hats, jewelry, you know, you can even change out laces and shoes, and it creates a different look. So there's kind of little tweaks you can do that could save you a lot of money.
So that's kind of really the last major question we want to sort of put out there, you know, because I do think a lot of our listeners might be the kind of size where maybe they struggle to find clothes in their size. What would you suggest, you know, outside of thrift store shopping, what do you suggest for people trying to find clothes and styles that suit them?
Well, basically, like, go shopping, go to a store and try a bunch of shit on. And it sucks to have to try stuff on because that's honestly like half the battle. Like a lot of people that don't enjoy shopping or fashion or, you know, having to hunt something down to fit them, it's typically like they don't want to go in and try it on. But the only way you're going to know if it fits you is if you do try it on. So, you know, go and, like I said, like get a smattering of what is at the store. If you're at a department store, that's even better because you could get like 5 different brands. You know, try on what is their medium or what is their large or extra large or, you know, 2XL. And there now is thankfully different lines that are coming out that, like, Ralph Lauren is very expensive, but they have for years now, at least a decade, had a big and tall section. And there are sales on the website. So if you know that it fits you in the store, go online and see if there's a sale and find that shirt or find something like it for cheaper.
We do have a listener question, actually. I just did a bit of a troll through the social medias and I did find one. Very simple question, but how much does a good tailor cost?
Honestly, it depends on what you're getting done.
Okay.
Because if you're just getting your pants hemmed, right, and you're just getting, like, you know, them taken up a little, that's not that much in the grand scheme. And you know, there are little things versus like having to basically rebuild a vest that you've outgrown, Like I had a vest taken in, and then it was like a couple years later, and I remember telling him too, and this is like a great move that tailors totally appreciate. When you ask them to do the alterations, you can tell them, like, can you please leave room in case I need to take it out? Because I've gotten things like thrifting that were much too big on me that I got taken in and then had to get taken out. But there's like a way to fold and manipulate the fabric underneath that they can literally undo it and have like 3 more inches of fabric for you. So it depends on how elaborate the tailoring is. You know, sometimes it could be $30 to get pants hemmed, or, you know, less than that even, depending on the actual tailor.
And I mean, I think it's knowing those little things. Like I've personally never been to a tailor before. I think it's that thing of like, oh, if I go to a tailor and then they're like, it's going to cost you £30 to have this shirt let out, you know, or like to the specific measurements. That kind of paranoid voice in my brain is going, is this legit or is this a scam? And am I going to get this shirt back and realize that it's ruined? Like, I think there's a lot of, because most people don't do that, there is fear.
Well, so part of me wants to tell you, like, if you went to a doctor and you said you needed an operation, what would you do? You'd probably get a second opinion. Yeah. And akin to that, it's like getting your hair cut by a hairstylist. You kind of got to figure out who cuts your hair right. I have a friend right now who keeps on telling me how he's gone to like 3 different barbers and can't find someone who knows how to deal with his hair. So like there is kind of that trial and error a little bit.
That brings us to the end of this week's episode. Mox, thank you so much for joining us.
Of course. It was an absolute pleasure. You guys are a blast.
Thank you. And where can people find you online?
Let's see. Grommr is igotmoxie. Instagram is Pens and Pounds. That's where you can find artwork. And then Twitter is, I think it's P and Pounds. So those are, yeah, and Tumblr, but Tumblr is kind of a dead space right now for me. I think my account got banned, but that's moxoutthebox.tumblr.com.
Well, there you go. So listen, that's a wrap for here now on Thicc Radio. Thank you everyone for listening. Please remember to like and subscribe, rate and give us 5 stars and leave a good review. As always, you can find me on Grommr and Instagram at stannnum, and Twitter and YouTube at stannnumg.
And you can find me on Grommr as Orpheus. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at thiccmouse. And of course, you can find more of what we've talked about today on Instagram and Patreon at Thicc Radio. So until next time, bye, Fats.
Bye, Fats.
Let's talk about it.
Thicc Radio is a Patreon and Enter app podcast produced by Stannnum and Thicc Mouse.
Mixed and mastered by stannnum.
Our artwork is provided by Lokitu.
Our theme song is provided by Spotify.